It is Bookmas Day 21, and we are coming at you with my top 5 romances of 2022. Hey everyone, my name's Amanda and I'm the Fun Size Reader, and I hate these videos. I dread these videos. Picking my top books of the year. Ugh, it hurts. It hurts me to choose these. I dread having to make this decision every single time I make one of these videos. How am I supposed to choose? How am I supposed to say that this one was better than this one when they both have the same star rating? What elements of each book makes it better than the other? It's so hard. It is so hard. And then I'm like, did I make the right decision? Is this right? Do I actually feel this way? And typically, once we've gotten to this point in the year, I have talked about these books so many freaking times that it's like a blob in my brain. Do I actually feel this way? Do I remember this? Did I actually like this book this much? Or am I just talking about it so much? I don't know. It's so hard to determine. And of course, I am, a scientist at heart. So I have to figure out the true reason why I feel that way about it. And it's a feeling. It's a feeling. It's really, really hard to pinpoint for me which ones are the best. But today I am going to be coming at you with my top 5 romances. This does not include fantasy romance. That's tomorrow. Keep an eye out. So anything that is a contemporary romance, rom-com, anything like that, that is what is in today's video. Now, these are only books that I gave 5 stars throughout the year. And to be honest, there were quite a few that I had to narrow down. Coming in at number 5 is Part of Your World by Abby Jimenez. I have loved every single one of Abby's books that I read. And so Part of Your World was no different for me. The thing that I struggled with when I chose this book as one of my top 5 for the year was, did I love the romance more than I loved the other romances? Or was it the other content of the book that really made me love this book? I was kind of in between because I really, really liked the romance. But I think it was everything else about the main character that made me truly fall in love with Alexis. I loved her and Daniel. I thought they were great. I thought the romance was super sweet, but there was so much other stuff going on with Alexis that I think that's one of the reasons why I loved this book as a whole. Daniel was super supportive, and there was that element of it that I think was wonderful. He gave Alexis more out of romance than she had ever gotten before. And so that was wonderful. There was so much more in this book than just the romance. And that is why I fell in love with this book. Abby writes great romances. Don't get me wrong. I've loved all of her books. They've all been 5 stars for me. But this one was more. This one was more. And that's why it had to be on my top of the year. The next one was Throttled by Lauren Asher. This one made it to the top and it kind of surprised me. As I was going through and trying to determine which ones I liked more and which ones I didn't, I got to this one and I was just yeah, I really liked this book. I really loved this book. It had elements of it that I loved. It had enemies to lovers. It had a secret romance. It had familial things. There was just so much wrapped in it. And it was a sport that I had never watched before. And a bunch of spice. So it was just overall just an amazing read for a romance. And I would definitely recommend this book and others by Lauren Asher to everyone. Number 3. Okay. I struggled putting this one on this list because I was am I totally cliche for adding this book on this list? Am I totally cliche for just being one of the people that, raves about her books? But I think this one kind of got me like Part of Your World did, where there was more about the book than just the romance that I loved. And that's why it made it a top book for me. It didn't make it to number 1, even though I cried and sobbed uncontrollably in this book. I think it still was gripping and emotional and had so many different elements of it that made it amazing, not just the romance. That book is Reminders of Him by Colleen Hoover. I did love the romance in this book, but I almost loved the love between mother and daughter in multiple relationships than I did the romance. So I think that made it amazing for me because I got romance. I got the romance that I wanted. We kind of got 2 different romance stories because of the story of the book, but we got way more than just the romance. And it was so emotional. I couldn't help but recommend it to people, even though it comes with a warning that you will cry and don't read it on Mother's Day. Anyways, back to fluffier. Number 2 is another Lauren Asher book. I know not everybody liked this one as much as they liked the second one, but I was the opposite. I liked book 1 way better than book 2. I think I liked this one better because I got to see more growth out of the male main character in book 1 that I did in book 2. And that book is The Fine Print by Lauren Asher. I loved this book. I thought it was so great. It had the forbidden boss romance. It was enemies to lovers. It was super spicy. It took place at an amusement park that is similar to one of my favorite places in the world. And it just made me happy. It made me happy. But there was also a lot of growth and development of the characters as well. There were a lot of emotional connections between the 2 of them. And you just really, at least I did, felt that when I was reading the book. And I really couldn't get enough of it. Number 1, my favorite romance of the year. I have talked to people about this book. I have recommended it incessantly. I loved reading this book. I did not feel like it was as long as it was. I loved the characters. I loved the side characters. I loved the story. I loved the growth. I loved the spice. I loved the elements in it that made it really real, like the family dynamics, the discussions of therapy. There's so much in this book that I just really loved. And that is Icebreaker by Hannah Grace. Yeah, my favorite romance of the year. I have recommended this to so many people and nobody has told me that they didn't like it yet. So I think that's great. The one thing that I laughed about in this, and I think I talked about this in my review, was I lived in the area that it took place in. And so there were some references to things that I was like, oh, clearly that person has never lived there or does not live there. So I was laughing at that. And then there were a couple British colloquialisms that were said. And I was like, nobody who is that age in Southern California is going to say that phrase. I thought that was kind of funny, but the rest of the book, absolutely loved it. Would recommend to everybody. Probably am going to get a physical copy for my bookshelves. And I'm really, really excited that this is a series and that we're going to get to see more love stories with more of the team members that we already love. So those are my top 5, but I'm going to quickly run through other ones that were also 5 stars, but just didn't make that top 5 list. Every Summer After by Carly Fortune. I did not put this one on my top list, even though I did love the book, because there was one major element that I just didn't wish happened. And I didn't like that about the book. So I couldn't put up something that there was a big element that I didn't like, but I still loved the book and still recommended it. Faking Christmas. I read this one a couple of weeks ago, and it just kind of sometimes feels weird to put a Christmas book on a top list of the year. I don't know. That just felt weird to me. I also just really loved it, but don't think I loved it as much as some of the other ones. Set on You by Amy Lee. I did really love this book. It was super, super quick. More of a slow burn read than the other ones, but definitely a 5-star read for me. Same thing with My Killer Vacation by Tessa Bailey. I gave this one 5 stars. Super enjoyable, super fast. This was Tessa being Tessa, and I loved it. And then Book Lovers, which I also gave 5 stars, but a lot of people didn't love. And a lot of people did. And I didn't love it as much as I loved some of her other books. So that's why it didn't make the top for me. Still, I really love Charlie Lastra, but I just didn't think it was as much as I loved the other books. Well, that's it. I had a lot of 5-star romance reads this year, and I'm honestly hoping for more last year. I get so excited when I find a 5-star read, especially because I have so many of you who ask me all the time for more romance reads because they're so quick to go through. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't keep up with giving you guys more and more and more. Like, I read fantasy too. Some of you, I have to get on the fantasy track, so we stop reading some contemporary and get onto some fantasy romance. Don't forget to stay tuned for tomorrow's video, which is my top 5 fantasy romance books of 2022. Which is arguably just as hard to choose as this one was. Thanks for coming today. Don't forget, you can also find me on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok at The Fun Size Reader. See you guys next time.